Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I'm your host, BENEDIKT, and I'm here today with my friend and co-host, Malcom owen-flood. Have you, buddy?
Hello, I'm great, man. It's always nice getting to see you twice in the same week.
Same, yeah, absolutely. So what have you been up to since Monday?
I worked on a really cool production yesterday. I was doing the location sound thing. I got to work with a lot of legally blind people, all the way from entirely blind to so no sight, born with no sight, to partially like peripheral stuff, and people that have lost their vision later in life. It was a very interesting day, and I felt like pretty honored to be working with such a very unique and talented and persevering group of people. They're up to a good cause that I'm not meant to talk about yet, but it was inspiring for sure. So I had a great day yesterday.
That is very cool. I have a follow-up question for that. Is it does it have to do with music, or is it in a completely different
context? Okay. Yeah, entirely different. More of a social activism kind of campaign, and much needed for sure. So it was very, very cool. Great people.
Very, very cool. Oh, looking forward to that. At some point you gotta give me a list of things you've worked on. I just want to know what you're actually doing there, because I don't know. The only thing I know was the music documentary you were doing. I think that was the first thing you did.
Yeah, that was
right in that world. And after that, I don't really know.
It's been all over the place, man. All over the place, yeah.
How long does it take for productions like that to actually, before they are actually released? Is any of the stuff out yet that you've worked on?
You know what? Hilariously, and we're talking 3 years of being in the film world with that music documentary starting, and I think one of them is out.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's there's a couple commercials and stuff like that have come out, and some pilots for some stuff, but it's the slowest turnaround. So I can't wait till have actual stuff I can point to as a portfolio in this industry. Otherwise it's just credit. I have credit and I can put that down on my CV and on my websites and stuff, but I can't show it to anybody. And a lot of it I still can't even talk about because of NDAs and stuff like that. So it's just trust me, I'm experienced, but I can't really prove it.
Yeah. I mean, I think these credits are fine, but it's obviously cool to have a movie to point to.
Absolutely. So awesome. Coming soon. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Great. All right. So today is a fun episode. At least I hope so. I expect it to be, because today we are talking about super hacks. At least that's the working title. I don't know if that's going to be the final title.
Super hacks.
But we're talking about recording super hacks. So little things you can do that you might have not thought about. It's little, I don't know how to call these. It's unconventional techniques maybe, or problem solvers.
It's the black magic of recording.
Yeah, exactly. So we try to cover a couple of different topics here, and hope to inspire you to use those things, because they are fun and they can really be problem solvers. They can really help you, address situations that might frustrate you. I remember using a couple of these things and finally thinking I have the solution for the problem that was bothering me for so long. So looking forward to that and to hearing the stories of you using those. Let's start with the first one on our list here, because I'm curious about it just because of the name of it. You called it Dragonforce. What's the Dragonforce?
So the Dragonforce technique is, of course, named after the band Dragonforce. And it comes from the story that they record their really fast, maxed out tempo music at a slower tempo, and then edit it to become faster. I have no idea if that's true, and regardless to if it's true, they're amazingly talented musicians. There's if this is not a knock on the band Dragonforce, they can play, and they can play that fast, but for recording to make it perfect, perhaps they use some trickery. And so actually my first experience with the Dragonforce technique was actually on my own band's album, Band of Rascals. The album's Tempest, and the song is called Little Longer Now if you want to go check it out. But this is It's not even that fast. It's about that fast. And that happens in kind of different iterations. But I was just like not happy with how punchy and tight it was turning out. So Ryan Jones, engineer that was working with me on that, was like, I got you. Goes to the end of the session, drops the tempo down. I can't remember how much he went, but essentially it doesn't really matter as long as it's slower, and got me to play. It's so slow that I couldn't possibly screw it up. And just like, and I had to do it a bunch of times even then, just to make like every hit so perfect. And then he just chopped at each transient, moved back into the tempo grid, and just literally quantized all those notes to the grid. And because they're slower and longer than you need, they just kind of chopped off the sustaining tails of them, and it was just like absolutely ridiculously perfect all of a sudden. And that's the Dragonforce technique.
Awesome. I wonder how many messages we'll get or comments we'll get from people who are like if you can't play it, just write a different song or write it slower or whatever. Did you have any like ego issues with that, or any like moral or ethical or whatever you want to call it problems with like recording something that you cannot play?
No, I just needed it. And I think I can play it. It's just I couldn't make it sound that stupidly perfect. This was like the equivalent of drum samples onto a guitar. I was making guitar samples for each of those notes essentially, and then piecing it together. And I'm so thrilled with how it turned out. So yeah, no qualms.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have a problem with stuff like that at all. But I can understand if like people are hesitant to record something that they don't feel confident about or that they can't reproduce live. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if you're making a record, the record's gonna be it's gonna be the best it can be, and it should be the best it can be, and regardless of what happens live, I think.
Totally. And also, we were like spending money just hand over fist in the studio. So it's like, wait, this will get what I want quick. Okay, here we go. I will do it. Exactly. I would have given the guitar to somebody else at that point.
Exactly. Maybe you could have nailed it, but it's just faster that way.
Much faster.
Yeah. Awesome. So hack number 2 is kind of a similar thing. And this time, this is about vocals. So maybe you are having a hard time trying to hit a very high note, and maybe you can sing it, but you're having like it's not your best day, or it's at the end of a long day, or you hit it a couple of times and now the voice is slowly not what it used to be. Could be a couple of reasons, or it's a high harmony that you don't necessarily sing live, but you want to track it in the studio. So what you could do is you could just pitch everything down a bit, sing to that like pitched backing track, and then pitch it up again, for example.
Right. Yeah. So that's pretty much the move, right? Is like if you can't hit it the way you want, you can just pitch it down, sing it to that, pitch your voice back up, and voila. Or you sing. I've heard people like sing a similar. Like sometimes melodies work out that you can kind of sing the same melody but transposed down like a few notes kind of thing, and then just pitch that up. But it's kind of hard to do that because it doesn't always like it's hard to sing the melody differently, and that's what that requires. So if you pitch the song down, you get to sing the same melody just in a different key, and then it's easier to shift it up.
Yeah, totally. By the way, there have been things like these are not new. Like people have done things like these even on tape, and sometimes like for creative effects. Mm-hmm. I heard a podcast recently where, again, I've talked about this dude a couple of times because I think he's really cool. Vance Powell talked about recording. I think it was a record that it was not a Jack White record, but Jack White was involved, I think. And they wanted to record a bass part that was not possible to play on that bass that they had. So they used the tape vary speed, slowed down the tape, played it higher up, and then or I can't remember correctly, but they sped up the tape and then they slowed it down so it gets lower than the bass can actually play. I think that was the move, something like that. So they played a different bass line basically, and they calculated what note it's gonna be depending on how much you speed up the tape and stuff, and then they slowed it back down, and then the bass was lower than it can actually go, and it sounded pretty cool. So stuff like that, trickery like that, has always been done. And there was tape vary speed. There were other things that you could use. There were like whole rack units where you could pitch things up and down.
Yep.
So this is not something new. It has always been done that way, and you've heard it on many records without even knowing, probably. So
yeah. So when you pitch shift your vocal around, depending on how you do it, it can kind of change, like, I think it's called the formant of your voice. And so if you sing something high for you, but it's actually already it's already too low, and then you pitch it up, your voice, if you're a guy, for example, is going to kind of become more chipmunky, and more female sounding, which it can be exactly what you want. Like if you want a female backing vocal, this can kind of help turn your voice into one a little bit if you do it the right way. A little altar boy can kind of manipulate that as well. So you can kind of like try and change it, make it sound like it's not you singing your harmonies if you want that.
Yep, that would have been my next super hack. I was just thinking about that, the little altar boy thing, because if it's only you and you want harmonies and you don't want them to sound all like you, little altar boy lets you change the formants. That's what it's called, and like you can, you can turn your voice into a different voice. Basically, it doesn't sound like you anymore. You can do that without changing the pitch, actually, or you can change the pitch and change the way your voice sounds. So that's a pretty quick hack where you can make gang vocals sound like more people. You can create harmonies that sound like different people, but it's just you. So that's actually a pretty cool super hack, I think, because I know for a fact that a lot of people struggle with this. I get asked quite a bit whether they should even record harmonies because it's only them and they don't want it to sound like it's only them. So why should they bother at all? And I always tell them, like, do it because I can always make them sound a little different. Yeah, totally. So don't be afraid to record backings or anything like that if you don't have a lot of people to do that.
Yeah, totally. I would say in a lot of cases, it's actually totally fine for it to be the same voice as well. It blends so well usually that it's kind of almost better half the time.
Yeah, right. Totally.
So don't overthink that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, pitching stuff around. And I don't know, different DAWs make this do this differently. Some lets you do it pretty easily and quickly, but with others it's a bit of a pain. So there are in Cubase, for example, it's a cool thing. You can just highlight, you can just select clips, and then you can just transpose them. You can just you just use the mouse wheel and transpose them up or down as many steps as you want, and then you hit play, record, and then you redo that move basically. Maybe it's different in your DAW, whatever you're using, but there is usually a way to just quickly transpose stuff. Usually. Yeah,
a little different in Pro Tools. It'll be different in every DAW though, so there's a way for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So the next one. Have you ever done that, Malcom? Soaking your hands in warm water.
Yeah. I did this to my twin brother, trying to make him pee the bed once, because that's apparently a trick.
I know that
move. Couldn't quite get a glass big enough though. So
I know that move. Like I think everybody knows that, but I've never actually talked to somebody who told me that it actually worked.
Yeah, totally. Like, yeah, I wonder if that's just an urban myth, but
maybe.
No, I have not done the soak hands trick. So why don't you explain what that is?
Yeah, so we don't try to make people pee. We are trying to get rid of squeaks when we record acoustic guitars, because that can be an issue. Usually, it doesn't bother me as much, but it depends. With some strings, some guitars, and like the combination of the hands, the strings, the guitar, I don't know, some can produce annoying squeaks when you mic up acoustic guitars. And I've read and tried it, and it really worked, that apparently classical guitarists, like really good ones, have done that forever. They would, like, before they go on stage, they would soak their hands in, like, not everybody, I think, but some of them would soak their hands in warm water, and that makes the skin softer, and that helps you get rid of the squeaks.
Right.
I think there might be a risk, because like it feels like it would. There might be a risk of getting like blisters on your fingers if you do that.
Yeah,
but if you don't have to play for too long, it can work really well. I've tried it, and it worked like a charm. So
right, yeah, I could see how that works better on nylon strings than metal strings, potentially. But it makes sense, and sometimes those squeaks are just the death of you. So this is like definitely a super hack. If you need it, you're going to need it bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even understand why it has to, but I read it, but I don't even understand why it has to be like warm water. I suppose like water would just be good.
Right.
but like, I don't know, whatever. try it. Soak your hands, make them softer, and get rid of the squeaks.
Yeah, let us know if it gets rid of the squeaks or makes you pee. Either or.
Exactly. One of the two things will happen. Let us know which one, please.
A simple email will do. No photo or video proof.
Exactly.
The next one we've talked about 100 times before, but it's just so good that I always want to mention it. Just using a paper towel or really anything under the guitar strings that you're not playing to make your guitar cleaner and less ugly sounding. So yeah, I always have like 3 pieces of paper towel in the back of my camper. One of them starting to become like the soft, pleasant cloth because it's been used so much, but it's also kind of gross and dirty because of all the stuff that comes off strings. But it's ancient, and yeah, you just slide it under. Like depending on the guitar, usually between the pickup and the strings, and then while you're playing the strings you actually play, those ones don't just resonate or you can't bump them and stuff like that. It just cleans it up. Seems like it's cheating, but it gets the job done, makes your guitar sound better and cleaner. And once you start distorting things and compressing things heavily, all those little noises build up. So sometimes you just want it to be so clean, and this is the way.
Totally. And I've seen different tricks here. I've seen the paper towel, of course, but I've also seen like people taping strings away, or I was always afraid of like what the glue would do to the strings if I remove the tape. So I don't want to, like, the paper towel just doesn't do any damage. And then you can remove strings entirely, which probably messes with the tuning a bit, but because of the string tension on the whole instrument and stuff. But you could technically do that.
Yeah, I think for like those pop punk octave guitar parts, probably taking out that string was the trick, because there's just no thud being added by that middle string at all, which is pretty cool.
Yes, exactly. But for most situations, the easiest and fastest way to do it is just the paper towel.
Yeah. Now, one super hack inside of a super hack, those little foam earplugs that you can get, just for trying to sleep and stuff, those are like really handy for this, because you can put them, they're small enough that you can put them under just one string. You can cut them into 2 and do like 2 different strings across different parts of the neck. They're like much easier to manipulate onto single strings than paper towel is.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool. So you could technically do the octave thing and just dampen the middle string.
Yeah, you can just get in there and get just the A string, for example, or just the G, and then, or you could do like the A and the B or whatever it calls for. It's awesome. Very handy.
Now, if you're wondering, by the way, how you're supposed to play all the other parts, then if you do that, listen to the last episode that we did. You don't have to play a song start to finish. You can comp songs. You can comp takes, so that means you can just record one part, use the paper towel or foam plug earplugs trick, and then just remove it for the next part. So just in case you're not aware, listen to episode, I think 84 it was, the last episode we did, and there we explained the whole concept of like comping takes and putting the best parts of each take together, so you don't have to play start to finish.
Right.
Just a side note here.
Yeah, it's funny because like the idea of doing the whole song doesn't even come to mind for me anymore. It's like now I think of the part, and then it's like, okay, first step, choose the part. Second step is optimize the instrument for that part, which means using paper towel or whatever I need to mute unneeded strings, tuning to the frets we're playing on, choosing the pick for that part. It's just all so under the microscope. It's funny.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, and maybe we should add here, in case if people are not aware, there are these things called fret wraps. They have different names, but I call them fret wraps. You've probably seen it. Metal guitarists use those all the time. It's a what is it made of? Some sort of cloth. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Foam cloth. No, not foam, but yeah, it's a wrapper that you wrap it around the guitar neck near the headstock, like above the neck near the headstock, like above the what's the thing? The nut, basically. Yeah. And that keeps the strings above the nut from resonating, from ringing. That might not be a problem for you, but maybe you just didn't notice so far. Yeah. Because it can be for some genres. Like when you want to have super clean, defined chords, super heavy chugs that are very, very defined and clean and almost like mechanical sounding. getting rid of everything that resonates and rings is huge. And it's like what you said, Malcolm, like these little things just add up. You have a ringing string here, you have this ring there, and you have this like all these resonances and stuff. And if you can get rid of all of these, it just compounds and you end up with a super clean, super heavy, super defined chord that you're hearing. And especially with like very, very distorted guitars, this can help a lot because the more distortion you use, the more obvious those things get.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually don't own one of those. And just in certain circumstances, I've had to just like reach over and hold it with some paper towel or something and be like, all right, play that again. So I should get one. Be worth investing in.
Yeah. I only noticed the difference once I've tried it. I've never bothered. I never thought it was an issue. And then I saw all these people use it and I wanted to try it. And only then did I realize what it actually does. Like it didn't bother me before, but now for certain parts, it kind of bothers me.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a move that can be needed. And the other cool thing about those is you can actually slide it over the nut onto the just onto the first fret. And then while they're changing chords, you know, if there's like big jumps, when they lift their fingers off, it doesn't ring the open string. It stays muted or more muted, I would say. So it's very useful there as well. And that's another, I mean, we're going to talk about this, just talk about two-man guitar recording right now.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
So two-man guitar recording is usually when you have an engineer that is able to run Pro Tools or their DAW while their left hand is holding the guitar for you to help do things. It can be anything from what I was just talking about where you reach over and you're muting certain strings while they play a part. And then sometimes you have to like come in and out. If you're watching the live stream of this, you're getting a good visual of me moving my hand around like a crazy person. But you're just doing whatever you can to help the guitarist along. So yeah, often that's muting and unmuting strings. Sometimes it's even fretting for them. If they like have this weird pinky reach, you can be the pinky smoother. Sometimes it is tuning. Sometimes it's volume. They're playing the part and you're riding the volume knob for them. It can be really anything, changing the pickup. It's whatever they need, but it turns a guitarist into somebody with 3 to 4 arms.
Yep, absolutely. It can also mean like operating the pedal board and like
totally
all sorts of things.
That's a good one.
I've seen a rig rundown once where Metallica's, at the time, Metallica's guitar tech, I don't know if it's the same guy still, but he explained what he does live with Hetfield's rig. And it's just insanity. It's like, because Hetfield's running around on the stage, like it never touches a pedal. Like there's nothing in front of him. He just plays. And, but he's using all sorts of different tones, different amps, even different distortion pedals, delays, reverbs, all of that stuff. And behind the stage is this huge rack. And there's this guy with the set list and like all the cues. And he has to like turn things on and off and switch between things at the right moment. And he explained that insane setup and like what he has to do during a show. And I was just thinking like imagine if he misses at this, like switching something at some point. Like you've been Metallica's guitar tech for the longest time, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
that'd be a high
it sounds like
job.
a super stressful job to me. So
yeah, screw that.
Yeah,
I get it though. Like, I think pedal boards are probably the main reason people screw up parts live.
Yeah,
so they're just doing that freaking jump, trying to get their delay turned on, not too late, not too early. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in the studio, this can be two-man guitar recording, can have many applications, as you said. So very, very useful, handy thing. And it doesn't have to be the engineer, or like if you're a self-recording band, you're the band and the engineer in one person or in one group. So maybe somebody else in the band can just do that, so you can focus on your job if you're engineering.
Yep.
But whoever has one hand free at least can do that.
Yeah, totally. Just whatever it takes to get the part done.
Awesome. Did you ever do like the real-time tuning thing?
I think I have. Yeah, I think we did like a boom kind of thing and then bringing it back up, and it was just easier for me to do it. I also like consider myself pretty good with hearing pitch and being able to get back to an exact kind of thing. So it was just easier for me to do it in that case.
Yeah, because that's not so easy to do.
No.
But with a little practice, it can be done.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. Now, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I thought maybe we should segue into the equivalent, but on drums. So 2-man drumming. The main idea that comes to mind is muting the cymbals for them, so that they can focus on playing whatever's coming right after, and maybe even be quicker. I mean, I'm always amazed at how good drummers are at muting cymbals, but it doesn't even have to be cymbals. It can just be muting any ringing drum, and sometimes that's more than they have limbs. So you can just have somebody in there and just be like, all right, you're going to mute the toms, I'm going to mute the cymbals, or whatever, and just get this really clean. And so, yeah, that is only possible with the help of your friends.
Totally. Yeah, I had some, and especially with the tom thing, there's no way a drummer, even if it was just a part that you could play with one hand, whatever that might be, but like there's no way you can reach below a floor tom and mute the resonant head and play at the same time. So you need the second person to do that. And I've had situations where I had to mute the resonant heads because they were just too audible for that specific quiet part that we wanted to do or whatever. So yeah, do that. And also I think muting cymbals, I also think that a lot of drummers are very, very good at that, surprisingly good, but also if someone else does it, it's almost always more precise. It's like and you would be surprised how much that can actually matter whether it's done like sloppy or really spot on. So I think, this simple choking the cymbals, muting the cymbals is something you could experiment with and have your friends do that. If you do that, please wear hearing protection. If you've never been especially in a small room next to a drum kit, you will be surprised by how damn loud it is if you're standing right next to the cymbals.
Yes. Yeah. Wear hearing protection. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's about it for the 2-man drumming, I think, anyways.
Did you ever had a situation where you would actually need more than 2 hands, like an actual part where 2 people drum together?
Not that I've tried to pull off in one take. I mean, I've overdubbed an extra tom or something like that, or an extra crash, but I haven't had that come up in just regular tracking. Have you?
No, me neither. I was just thinking about whether this could be a cool hack for some parts, but I don't know. A fun thing to experiment with, maybe, but
yeah,
not
I
really
think
a hack.
Could be possible,
No. Okay.
All
so,
right.
but talking about drums, there is something that I use all the time and I really love, and that is, we call it here on our list, temporary dampening for drums. What we mean by that is, whenever you stick something onto a drum head to dampen it, like a moon gel or a tape or whatever people use to dampen their drums, to like muffling techniques, it does the job, but it also usually dampens the attack a lot and just alters the drum tone entirely. Can even change how you perceive the tuning. Just the whole head just moves and reacts differently. And there's a way around that. The first thing you could do without affecting the better head at all is you can, before you put on the better head, you can put a very thin cloth or like a paper towel or something like that inside the tom, for example, onto the resonant head so that it lies on the resonant head. And then when you hit the tom, the thing will lift up and then fall back down again. Depending on how heavy it is, it will be quicker or slower. And this can sound, with more heavy stuff, it can almost sound like a gated drum effect where you have the full sustain when the thing lifts off, and then you'll have the gate closed, so to speak, when it comes back down. But with a very light material or something like a cotton ball or something like that, you can have a subtle dampening and just less annoying resonant heads if that's something that bothers you with your tuning. So that is something I really like. It also gets rid of the basketball effect in toms. I really like that. Some toms sound like a bouncing basketball, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And you can, especially with certain mics, and you can get rid of that by using this technique. Sometimes I put a really heavy cloth in there and it just works.
Right.
And what I like about it is that the moment you hit the tom, it just lifts off and lets the attack through, at least the part right after the attack, and then the dampening starts, and it doesn't change the whole drum sound as much.
Yeah, it's a little transparent.
Yeah, and then another thing you can do on the better head is there's actual products for that now. They're called Snare Weights.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, they are attached. They are dampening things that are attached to the rim and not to the drum head. They lie on the drum head, but they are attached to the rim. And if you hit the drum, the same principle applies. It lifts off, lets the attack through, the whole head can move, and then it comes back down again and applies the dampening. And that just sounds more natural to me. And they come in different weights and sizes. Some of them, I have ones, they are made of this artificial leather, I think. And that you can fold them and make a small one or a bigger one. They have some that are made of like the same material as the actual drum head. Like, you can just put an old drum head onto a drum head to dampen it, or a ring made of the same material, something like that. And the Snare Weights makes products that are part of a cut up drum head that's attached to the rim, and it's the same principle. There are different types of those things, but you can easily make them yourself, or just tape whatever you have to the rim, but not to the drum skin.
Yeah. I don't think you already mentioned, but some people just like open their wallet and put half of it, like pretty much the crease of it's on the rim, and then it just kind of flaps.
Yeah,
hopefully.
That's a good one.
Sometimes it flies off, but
yeah, that's a good one. Or just that's a pretty heavy effect, but it can also work. You can put a towel or a lightweight cloth thing just over the edge of the drum, just a little bit, depending on how far you put it in. That, like, how much of it covers the drum will change how much dampening you apply. But you can do that for a really muffled sound, and all kinds of cool things without damaging the head and without changing how the head moves when you hit it.
Totally. Yeah, this is kind of both, but I had a sweater of mine, like a flannel, that we put on a floor tom for most of the song, and it just made the drum really have no sustain. The floor tom just was very thuddy and quick. And then at a certain point, we had somebody else, this goes back to the two-man drumming, pull it off for the drummer so they could just keep playing the part. But now the drum was wide open. So you can kind of like dampen and undampen in the same take if you want to.
Yeah. Awesome. And what was also wide open was the hole in your shirt.
Yes, it did punch a hole right through my shirt. I didn't expect that, honestly. I thought it was going to be fine, but apparently drummers hit hard and consistently too. The accuracy was on.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually, just to be able to remove and apply it again for certain parts.
Yeah, totally. It's totally, like, I do it quite a bit, even with moon gels on the snare and stuff. Like, the verse will just be choked up a little bit harder than the chorus potentially. It's totally, like, micro little changes like that add up for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. With moon gels, I can think of two other hacks real quick that I absolutely want to mention. The first one is not, it might sound obvious, but maybe you haven't tried it. Many people just put the whole moon gel on the drum. First of all, you can cut these things and just put smaller pieces of it on the drum, which is a completely different effect, more subtle, and usually a little bit of it is plenty. Usually you don't need the whole thing.
Right.
And then the other thing is, if you need the whole thing or if you need more dampening, try making really small pieces, like cutting it into really small pieces and then applying it sort of symmetrically around the drum, which sounds much more natural most of the time than just applying it on one side, because like it's sort of logical, but you don't really change how the whole drum head moves. You dampen it in all directions.
Totally.
Similarly. So yeah. In case you didn't do that, it's
that's
cool.
Totally valid. It sounds different than like just the whole thing on it. I would say that, like, don't be afraid to use the whole thing if it sounds right. Yeah. But generally, when you cut, like, I'm just cut it into fours and then make a little plus sign essentially out of it. That sounds more like the snare. Like, if you just want the drum to be more controlled, it sound the same. That's the move. Yeah,
absolutely. And then there's another hack, and that's really a hack. And the first time I heard that, I thought the guy was joking. I heard it from Matt Brown, an amazing drum tech. I saw him speak at a conference, and he was just using whole moon gels on the cymbals to get rid of like harsh resonances and crash cymbals. And he didn't use it on the edge of the cymbal or like anywhere where you would hit the cymbal, but he just put it on the bell of the crash cymbals. And I thought, like, that's got to sound like crap. And what it did was, and I've used that countless times since then, what it does is, for most cymbals, especially cheaper ones or ones that have like nasty resonances or are very bright, it leaves the sustain and everything sort of sounds the same and is just as long. They are also not more quiet, but they sound evened out. It's almost like you applied soothe during recording. It just evens out the resonant peaks and valleys in the upper mid range, and and the top end of your cymbals. It's at least that's what it sounds like, and you can already hear it in the room, but you can especially hear it when it's mic'd. And I've never thought that it sounded better without them. I didn't use it in every single session because sometimes the cymbals just sounded fine. But whenever I thought the cymbals were a little bit harsh and I tried this trick, it just worked and it was always better.
Cool. Yeah, I've never tried that. I mean, I've definitely done some cymbal muting techniques and stuff like that, but I've never tried moon gel, so that's really cool.
Yeah, super easy and really, really works.
Awesome.
Well, I've even included that in my in one of the Academy videos that I have, because it's like, yeah, it's just such a game changer. It has been a game changer in a couple of sessions.
Very cool.
Yep. By the way,
right.
we've just opened coaching.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we just opened our coaching program because I mentioned the Academy now. We've just opened our new coaching program. And maybe when you hear this, when you listen to this podcast, you've already heard the ad at the beginning for this coaching program. So essentially, if you want to help with your recordings, if you want to improve your recordings and need help with that, and you want to have in-depth coaching and guidance, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, the whole thing, a whole like catalog of like curated videos, a personalized roadmap for you that guides you through the whole process, customized for whatever you need to accomplish your goals. We offer this coaching program now, and you can go to the selfrecordingband.com and just apply for a completely free coaching call, 1 hour coaching where we discuss where you are, where you want to go, what would help you get there, and we'll figure out whether or not our coaching program would be a good fit. And if it's not, you can just run with what you learned in that coaching session, and it's completely free. So go to the selfrecordingband.com and hit the apply for a call button.
Awesome. That's so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm doing the first couple of calls now with people who book those calls, and it's super fun.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a big success.
I hope so. And I'm definitely sure it's going to be a big success for the people going through that coaching, and and even just booking those free calls, because we really go in depth, and we've seen a couple of amazing transformations already. So,
yeah, it's investing in yourself is always a good idea, listeners.
Yeah.
Always.
Totally. All right. Now, the next one, you got to explain that again. I sort of get it, and I think it's a really, really cool idea, but I've never tried it.
Yeah, I think I tried it once, and honestly, it didn't work. But I saw, I think it was
included in this episode,
but it's a super hack. It's just something weird. And it was using drumsticks on a bass guitar. And I think it was Garth Richardson I saw in a video. I can't remember, though. This was so long ago. But essentially, the bass guitarist was fretting the notes and somebody else was playing them with drumsticks. And it sounded clangy and heavy as hell. But there's going to be a certain time and a place. It's like a good right hand wasn't enough in this case, I guess.
Yep.
So let us know if that works.
I wonder how they... Like, how did they do it? Did they like do the paper towel thing as well? Because or did they just hit the strings so precise that the other strings wouldn't ring?
I honestly can't remember. This was over a decade ago that I saw this video for sure. It just kind of came to mind while we were talking about this.
Yeah, because I would think like the sound of it can be pretty cool, I assume. I'm sure, but I was just thinking if I would hit a bass with a drumstick, the whole thing would like vibrate and rattle and make all sorts of noises. So
you'd have to, be accurate and probably be muting. I think you're right. Mute those other strings. It probably would only work on the, like, I don't know. You'd need a certain amount of tension for it to really pay off, I think. So
maybe,
long scale probably. But
I
don't know. If you try that, let us know how it goes for you.
I can imagine it's super cool on like just a open low string on this very heavy part where you want that piano like tone and a lot of attack and like that gnarly, and maybe even like a little pitch bend thing that you can hear because you're hitting the string, like this. Right. I don't know. Like can be really cool.
Totally. Yeah. And just make sure you don't miss.
Yep.
Yeah. Choose a drummer you trust.
Exactly. All right. Cool. That's a great one. Now, the next one also is about bass, and it might be obvious to some people. It might be totally new to other people. I remember when I was starting out, I was afraid of, or I never even thought about plugging basses into guitar amps because I thought I would damage the guitar amp or the speaker or whatever. And that is not the case. Like, I mean, if you damage your amp doing that, don't sue me. It's like you have to try and see. There's no responsibility here for whatever you do, but technically there shouldn't be an issue because it's just a pickup. It's an instrument. It's the same impedance or similar impedance. And actually, some guitar amps have been designed as bass amps and vice versa. So I've done it countless times. Other people have as well. So you can absolutely plug a bass into a guitar amp. And why would you do that? Well, because I remember I had a small practice bass amp that was not too great sounding. It had cool low end, but it was very clean, very boring sounding. It didn't have an interesting mid-range or a usable distortion. And it was just not suitable for the heavy music that I wanted to make. When I discovered that I could plug the bass into a guitar amp, especially with fresh strings on, as we always preach, that would give me like this really clear, bright, gnarly sound, and I could just dial in the distortion. Even a clean amp just had usually more distortion than a bass amp, so because it has less headroom and you can just drive it a little bit. It just sounded very, very awesome. And I used to use a splitter, and I sent the bass into the bass amp and the guitar amp at the same time, and I used the low end from the bass amp and the mid-range and the upper mid-range and the highs, the top end from the guitar amp. I would just turn the bass all the way down on the guitar amp and just use the upper part, and I would turn the treble down on the bass amp and just use the lower part. Similar to what we do in the DAW now, which could also be considered a super hack, but that is part of mixing, which we'll cover in another episode. But it's like a similar thing. You just split up the bass into low end and mid-range and top end, and you can saturate, distort the top end and the mid-range and have full control over that. And I personally think that a lot of guitar amps sound really, really, really good in that application on basses. I don't know why that is. I obviously have a Sans amp and the Dark Glass and some plugins and all those things, but sometimes I still use a guitar amp to do that trick because it just sounds killer. Some guitar amps just do that trick very, very well. I don't know. And then there's, of course, the classic choices that can do both, like the Ampeg V4. Bands like Queens of the Stone Age used it on guitars a ton. It's obviously also a legendary bass amp. So there are amps that can do both. But like putting your bass through an 800 or something like that can be very, very awesome. So
very cool. Yeah, I definitely came up under the impression that you were not meant to do this. And now that I think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Like it's just the guitar speaker is just not going to reproduce the really sub-bass stuff, so it's not going to damage it. It doesn't make sense to me. But for whatever reason, that was what went around in our youth. And I bet most people listening to this have heard that at some point. So again, if your guitar amp does break, not our fault.
No. And if you think about Lemmy's tone, for example,
right,
bass into the Marshall, that sort of thing.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah, not our fault, but I'm pretty sure that you can't do any damage. And also, you're not supposed to, or I mean you can, but the way I use it, I'm not putting the full low end or trying to get a bunch of low end out of the guitar speaker. I just try to get the grit, the upper mid range, the top end, the distortion. I even turn down the bass. I don't even try to capture that. So because I think bass cabs or the DI can do that job much better than a guitar cab can.
Right.
So that's not even the point.
Yeah, and
so
there's
really no risk.
You're not trying to run it at as a bass amp at bass amp volumes for a stage show. So if you were trying to make your guitar amp into a bass amp, that's where problems could occur. Yeah,
probably. Yeah. So again, when would you do that? If you have a crappy bass amp or a small practice amp that just doesn't sound exciting, doesn't have distortion, but you might have a guitar amp that sounds cool, or even a small guitar amp with great distortion, or a pedal or something like that, just try and use it and see if you can get that modern, gnarly, distorted, heavy bass tone that you hear on so many records. It can be the solution to that.
All right. Now, this next one, we got to touch on singers a little bit. I guess we did. We did the pitch shifting of vocals, but they get one more. I'll let you take this one because it was your note, and I think it's great.
Okay. So two things, like two fixes for this. The problem is a lot of singers want to move in front of the mic. They just feel the energy, the excitement. They just can't stand still. And that's totally fine. Like if you have a singer like that in your band, or if you are a person like that, it can be better to just do whatever you feel like and like focus on the performance and the vibe and the energy more than just focusing on the right distance to the mic and like the mic position and standing still. Because if you have to think about that stuff too much, if it's like if it's not natural to you and you have to think about that, it can actually ruin the performance, I think. So if that is the case, and you obviously got to try, but if that is the case, the first fix to this is just grab a handheld mic like a 58. Can totally work. Sometimes the trade-off obviously is that it doesn't sound as bright and not as expensive usually than as a good condenser mic. But that trade-off can be totally worth it if the performance is much, much better, if the energy is better, if like it just feels better. Then I would always prefer that take compared to a boring and careful take in front of a condenser mic. So I think most people would agree here. That's the first fix. And again, Metallica example, Hatfield even in front of the turned on, like cranked studio monitors with the SM7 in his hands in the control room. Everyone or many people have seen that probably in the documentary. Those takes ended up being on the record. He recorded some of the vocals in the control room in front of cranked big speakers with the SM7 in his hands, and it just worked. So
yeah,
if that's what you want to do.
I do want to say that this isn't an excuse to not try and learn mic technique and stuff like that. It's just if you haven't had the opportunity to get good at it and you're in the studio all of a sudden you need to get the job done, then don't be afraid to pivot into this approach. But you should absolutely try to become prepared for the studio and learn some mic technique and go that way. Agreed.
And then the second fix, and that might be the best of both worlds, sort of, is if your room allows for it, if you have a controlled, treated room, and if you find a great mic position or a great position for the singer and the mic in the room, what you can try is you can set your condenser mic to Omni if it lets you do this. Many mics have like switchable polar patterns, and if you can go from cardioid or hypercardioid or whatever you have to Omni, and this is usually the round circle symbol on your mic. If it has that, you have you have an Omni mode. What that means is the mic is not directional anymore. So if you set it to Omni, it's not only hearing what happens in front of it, but also what happens in the back and next to it on the sides. It's not exactly the same around the mic usually, but pretty close to that. And the beautiful thing about it is it gets rid of it helps you get rid of the proximity effect. The mic doesn't have a proximity effect anymore. The proximity effect is that when you go closer to the mic, it sounds more bassy. So you can hear that now probably. If I go very close to the mic, it sounds more bassy. If I go away from the mic, it sounds less bassy. So less low end. And that effect goes away if you switch to Omni. So that means, and also due to the lack of a directional pattern, you can just move around the mic without changing the sound too much, without proximity effect, without other filtering that happens. And that allows you to move a little more freely. The downside is that if your room is crappy, if you have a ton of ambience, then the mic will pick that up as well, more so than a directional mic, because everything that's coming from the back, reflections from the walls and stuff like that will be louder. But if the room allows for that, that can be a great fix. And I've heard that, I heard it in a podcast also, that Björk, whatever you want to call her, she used that technique, or they figured that she felt more comfortable moving a little bit more, and instead of using a traditional cardioid vocal mic, they switched it to Omni and used that on the record for that reason. So she felt good performing, she could move a little more, and it sounded fine.
Yeah, I've definitely had some good luck with Omni. Have you ever used like any of those nice tube mics where there's a variable like kind of pattern shifter, so you can kind of go towards Omni but not all the way if you want, or towards figure 8? That can be really cool too. I found that like some people just need me to open it up a little bit more so that it's not so up the middle, the pattern. And so sometimes if you're lucky, you've got access to a mic like that and you can kind of find the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I have done that. and it's super nice. I'm the type of person, I'm always afraid that I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do, which is kind of weird because I always encourage people to be brave and make bold decisions, and I try to do that myself. But whenever I'm in this in-between thing between two patterns, I'm thinking like, what am I doing? I don't see exactly what I'm doing. It just kind of feels uncomfortable. So I have done it. Yeah, it's just the OCD.
You prefer one or the other. That's
yeah.
Great. Yeah. I would say generally I do as well, but every once in a while it's like, just open it up a little bit more.
I agree that it's very, very useful and cool to have that option. And I've never tried these mics, and I'd love to, where you can change the polar pattern after you've recorded. There are a couple of mics that let you do that with the software. There's the Townsend Labs Sphere, a modeling mic, and a couple of others. They have two diaphragms, two membranes, and you can record and then afterwards change the pattern. Yeah. Which maybe could be a solution if you didn't realize that was an issue. So I don't know. I haven't tried it, but I figure like if you just recorded and you thought it was fine, and then you figured that the proximity effect was like too much or the sound was changing too much while the singer was moving, maybe you can solve it by just changing the polar pattern after you've recorded. That sounds like a cool thing to me, but I haven't tried it.
I have so many doubts, but maybe it works fine. I haven't tried it either, so I can't say anything.
I don't know. I think actually it's not only this modeling mic. I think there are a couple of others that let you do that as well now. I've seen a couple of dual diaphragm or whatever you want to call it mics that have that option with the software, even if they're not modeling mics. I don't know how it works, but I've seen it a couple of times now. So
cool. Yeah. If you've used that and it does work, let us know. My fear is that it just tries to trick you into thinking it works. Like,
unless it's could be some face trick or whatever. I don't know. It's like, but maybe that's, I don't know. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't know enough about it. I'm always skeptical, but if it works, it sounds like a very cool idea.
Yes, it does. It sounds awesome. All right. Well, I think that's probably plenty for the Super Hacks tracking episode. We do have plans to do a Super Hacks mixing episode, so stay tuned for that. There will be more Super Hacks on the way. I just like saying Super Hacks now.
Me too. Yeah, let's do a couple more of these. These are fun. So we're definitely going to do a mixing one with mixing hacks, Super Hacks. And you know what also would be fun? If you, the listeners, if you have your sort of hacks or things you've discovered or heard of or want to know whether it works or not, first of all, you should just try. But if you know of any super hacks like that, just let us know, and maybe we'll do sort of an audience episode and like present your super hacks. That would be cool. We would learn a ton from it, and we could like, let our community benefit from your hacks and your experience.
Definitely, yeah. So head to theselfrecordingband.com/community, and you can post it in there.
Absolutely.
That was the first time I remembered the link.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you.
Episode 85. I did
it. Also, by the way, you said episode 85. It's not going to be so long until we hit like episode 100.
Oh, we got to start thinking about that.
What are we going to do then?
Maybe I can fly to Germany. We can do our first in-person episode.
That would be super rad. I'd love to come to Canada too. So maybe
our first in-person meeting ever.
I bet
most listeners aren't aware that we've never seen each other in person.
Never. We've known each other for 3 years now or so.
Yeah, I think so. Crazy.
Yeah, it's about time. It's about time.
Yeah, we gotta have a beer.
All right. So send us your super hacks, and maybe, I don't know, if you have ideas for a great episode 100 or a celebration thing we could do or whatever, let us know as well. We can never plan that stuff early enough. So
totally.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.